Welcome back to Dark Nexus. Tonight, it's Act 3, Chapter 123. We're picking up on the afternoon of the 17th of Chthona, day 37 on the boat, mile 380 or so. With the ship's hold restocked with supplies, Joshua has got the Sullen Starling rapidly moving downriver towards Callus Lake and away, thank you very much, from Zur as quickly as possible. We handled some shopping details off-air since last week, and the party has managed to bring in a bunch of great, much-needed supplies, mostly in the area of healing consumables. A fully charged wand, a bunch of potions and scrolls. We got a Masterwork Dan Bong for the Gripper, which will help with grapple checks and the like, plus a fun collection of utility scrolls for Dora that I'm sure we'll start to see in action, probably in the dreams, pretty soon. And 4 scrolls of restoration. We mostly actually cleared out the bag of holding of stuff we've been sitting on to sell off and got a bunch of great stuff that's going to really help us down the line. We passed through a number of days last episode, and just to catch everybody up on the crew's status after some offline rolls, everybody's sanity damage is back down to 0. It is amazing what stopping and resting for a few days can actually do. Everyone's dormant with a couple of days of recovery under their belts, except for Grip, who just had his first day of 0 sanity damage, working towards that 7 you need in order to make those recovery checks. Grip and Barnabas have no penalties when they're dormant, same for Skywin. Nixon has the slightly less debilitating save structure against the phobia, and Vic is down to just a -1 penalty on will saves. All ability damage has been rested to full, and now that we have these restoration scrolls, we can actually tend to Vic and Skywin's ability drain. So, to use those scrolls, various folks could attempt to use magic device checks, but Katie, it turns out Stasi can just use them. She knows the read magic cantrip, so she wouldn't have to make any check to decipher the writing. The spell is on her list. She has more than sufficient wisdom to cast it, and believe it or not, the scrolls are at caster level 7, which is lower than her caster level, and that means she can just do it. No check. Boom.
Stasi is a 4th level caster, not an 8th level caster.
8th level caster. All right. She will have to make a caster level check. So the caster level check will be 8.
15.
And Skywin is completely healed of all constitution drain. And let's tend to Vic.
14.
All right, Vic, you can get that shit off your sheet. You're back to 20 decks again.
Oh, that's so nice.
So between all of the healing and counseling of the past half week or so, y'all have had your hands full being, somewhat normal of late after the trauma of 3 dream quests back to back to back. Grip's been learning more about navigation with Otha. Dora has been boosting morale on the boat and working with Gosa on the reading project. Vic's been hanging out, swapping stories with Harlar, helping him cook, and Dabwick has been helping to pick up the slack when Skywin was in bed, putting in some extra time with Vildi and Joshua. And now that the stress of our hectic morning in Zur is over, and the healing has happened, before we get a sailor check from Gripper for the day and check in with Dabs to see if they have any special meditation thoughts cooking, I'm not sure if you're working on anything right now, Paul. We'll find out. I wanted to pop back to Dora.
Uh-oh.
Before Zur, she performed a psychometry reading on the vial of silver dust that had once belonged to a young Tima, or Anathema, as she thought of herself long ago. This was a private vision, and so Dora is the only one sitting on the information of what she saw right now. I am curious to hear, Katie, your thoughts on how Dora is processing what she saw and whether or not she decides to share anything about this with the group. And then also, we have this TARDIS-y, bigger on the inside logbook of Captain Vadrax. I'm curious to see if Dora or Vic or Barnabas want to spend this afternoon block plowing through maybe the last chunk of pages there to see if they can pull up any information. But let's hear about Dora and this vial of silver dust. We never stopped to talk about it. We got so engaged in Zur shit.
Yeah, so I think that's been lingering in the back of Dora's mind ever since, while dimension dooring all over Zur and stuff like that, and watching Gosa take those first tentative steps towards a deeper understanding, things like that. Like, Dora would rather die than allow her own soul to be that blackened and to give in to that. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no question for her about that. That, like, rather than revel in revenge and indulgence and punishment and stuff, she would rather walk away. She would rather not. But she understands it. She understands how pressure and time are fundamentally transformative.
Yeah.
So I think for the first time she's starting to see she wasn't always this just insane being that lives inside her head. She is a fully three-dimensional person who's been through something no human beings should have to endure. And this is the natural, organic response to that stimulus. So it continues the progression of sort of sucking the drama out of this relationship they share.
Right.
She is begrudgingly respectful of what it took to take control of her own life, the patience and the opportunity, and to refrain from even giving him any indication that she was not under his, that's impressive on a technical level. So I think Dora is starting to think of her not as Tima, but as anathema, because that's a figure that she can understand. That's a story that touches her and haunts her. So I think part of her is like, how do I figure out what happened to her? Because Dora can't give her back this body. She can't do it. She can do it for a limited amount of time, and eventually she is shunted away. That time gets longer and longer, but it's not a choice that Dora can make. Not that she would, but it's just not an option. So however angry Tima is at her lack of control here, Dora can't help that. But Dora might be able to try to figure out what happened, why they are this way, why they're sharing this body and potentially a soul, if you believe in that sort of thing. Like, right. I think their working relationship has sort of fallen into a place of, I'll tap you when I need you and it'll be fun for you, and that's all I can do. The written conversation is evolving, and they're sort of a little bit on the same side on some questions and things they both don't know. So the whole relationship is evolving. But I think this vision slots something into place for Dora of, we're not friends, we'll never be friends, but she is not exactly my enemy either, even though she wants to kill me, and if she ever gets the chance, she totally, you know what I mean? Like, but she isn't, and she can't do that either, as far as we know.
And this vision of her, I think the terminology that we used for much of book one was rage monster.
Yeah.
That terminology feels like it's falling away, as like she's not simply a monster.
Yeah, when you understand where the chaos is coming from, it starts to look more ordered. It starts to feel, it makes sense. You don't have to like it, and you don't have to tolerate it, but you can't just write someone off for bad behavior anymore, because what the hell else is she supposed to do with that trauma?
Question for you on the mechanics side. Mm-hmm. So we know, because of the way your class ability works, that Tima can't stay here longer than X rounds per day. But what is the story of that?
Yeah, Dora doesn't know. And frankly, I don't know either.
So what Dora feels it as, it's just over?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's what we've only been there a couple of times.
Yeah, like twice, I think, maybe.
And I think the first time was when Dora purposely let her out to talk to everyone else to see if they could find out if she knew anything. She didn't. She ended up not knowing. But and at that point, we kind of just said, flavor-wise, she'll just be out as long as she can, and then we'll get some stuff, and then she'll get shunted back, because that's how the mechanic worked. And I think the second time was in the Dreamlands, maybe. I'm not really sure. I can't remember. She was out for a very long time, at least 7 or 8 rounds. And
I think it was maybe that first trip to the caravanserai.
That's what I think. I have it locked in my head with Dabs.
Yeah, so Dabs died.
dying.
Grip ran away. Vic was chasing after Grip, trying to save him.
Yeah.
And you were stuck back in the...
And I found the... I'm sorry. Anathema found the
gem.
The gem of seeing,
yeah.
right? It was just like a cord had been pulled, like a spring had gone back. She couldn't stay forward any longer.
So if you had said in response to this question, I think maybe secretly Dora shuts it down at this point.
The strength of her will.
But that feels like it's not where you're leaning. So
I've never felt that.
Let's think of it right now. Maybe Dora is identifying it is that the amount of energy and will it takes her to actually smash forward, like she cannot maintain it. She's too weak. She's getting stronger and stronger.
But so am I.
Yes. Yeah.
So
yeah,
it's balancing out.
So is this a story that you share with the rest of the group? Because now, as we think back to the story of the other object that we have found in the Dreamlands recently was this tattoo needle of Grip's. And it carried with it, I mean, not the same story, but a fairly similar story. I mean, in that case...
Didn't go as well for Grip.
No, it did not. No, it did
Anathema.
not. But it was a story about a young person making the choice to kill. In Grip's case, he was younger than Anathema was and was being manipulated by Weirly. So it wasn't going to go well. In this case, Anathema was kind of on her own, but it was a similar thing. Circumstances pushed these two adolescents to make a very disturbing choice with consequences for their lives, you know, in kind of the immediate short term for Grip. Maybe we can probably think about, in Anathema's case, in the longer term, since she wasn't immediately punished for it. It sounds like, in fact, the stranger was pleased.
Yeah.
But what do you think? Does she share this with the group? Does she open this up to a conversation about why you're finding these things? Why they are there?
And both were found in the Dreamlands? No.
Yeah.
The silver vial was found on the ship in the real world, yeah?
From the Dreamlands.
But it came there from the Dreamlands.
Right.
Yes.
So they I mean, Dora's interpreting that as they lost these pieces of themselves when they went the first time.
Mm-hmm.
But it's starting to feel like Hansel and Gretel, that maybe they left these pieces somehow. You know, it's starting to feel to her like these things were purposely left behind as a way of saying, don't think you understand everything about who you used to be. And it does not strike me that Dora would ever simply bring this up in conversation. Tima is a very sensitive subject, the way they all react when she's out, the way they talk to her.
Yeah.
So it's not like she would just be like, hey, guess what I found out about Tima? She's totally understandable. She would, talking to Vic about it is like...
Yeah, he doesn't even believe you're having the conversation.
Right.
Or he thinks he's talking to himself.
So like, that the two people that maybe would understand are both wrestling with madnesses that she cannot fathom how this story would help in any way with that. But putting that together with the needle, should she be in a position to have therapy with Grip again, I can see how she would use that to relate to him.
Yes.
But I can't, it's not dinner conversation.
Right.
And I think it feels a little like a betrayal to just share it for the sake of sharing it. It's not her pain. It's not her trauma. And it's not her story to tell. She sees Tima as a fully formed human being who simply exists in only her mind, really.
And as much as in some ways she's an enemy, you also feel a little bound to protect her in some ways.
Yeah,
or protect
as she would
information about her.
As Dora would feel that way about anybody's boundaries.
Yeah.
She's allowed to have them. Maybe respecting them is an experience Tima's never had.
That could very well
Do you know
be.
what I mean?
Yeah.
So that it feels like a betrayal to just share it for the sake of sharing it.
Yeah.
She doesn't need therapy over it. Dora doesn't, it's a story that happened to someone else. It still feels that way, but it's somebody she is close to that the others are not.
Well, Robert and Katie, let's keep our eye on.
Yeah.
Maybe there will be in the coming weeks on the boat some instance where therapy comes up naturally between the two of you, and we can sort of put a pin on maybe this conversation happens at that time. Gripso immediately went mad after experiencing Dora sharing the needle vision. That the next thing we did with Grip
I was already a bit mad.
Yeah. But we then focused so much on this now seeing delusion Ray vomiting spiders and becoming more prominent in your life. So we never paused to check back in on how he has processed that story as well, or if he's even not ready to process it super consciously given his mental state. I don't know.
I had a question actually that popped into my head.
Yeah.
When we were earlier. What is the age difference between Grip in the vision with Wherein and Grip on the docks with the sack over his head at the Act 1 interlude?
So I was a little sketchy in the description of Grip's age. I think in both cases, number one, because, Dora's just seeing it, and number two, because half-orcs age a little differently and much more rapidly. I think you would think of there was probably a few years between meeting Wherein and the needle. But then also, again, probably maybe only a matter of years before you were on the dock. Because a half-orc's life is a little short and brutish, right? Like they mature very, very quickly. So thinking of the span of time between Anathema meeting the stranger and then this time that could have been a decade or more. It was probably a handful of years in Grip's case.
Okay.
But really it was, I've been kind of describing it as you were a child when you met her, you were an adolescent at this moment, whatever that means to each of your characters' ages, because you all age a little differently, and then you were an adult when, fully formed, and in Dora's case, like middle-aged adult when the campaign began. But really, Grip is not too far off middle age for a half-orc either, really.
Yeah. So he went from the spiders driving him crazy to the forest and getting killed and going through that experience. So I guess, I don't know, I forget what your original question was now.
We're circling around the tattoo needle vision, and if he has had any reaction to that you want to share at this time, or if he's just been so focused on being insane, that's 100% understandable.
I think he's had too much in his brain to spend a lot of time being reflective about it.
Yeah.
I feel like there are probably still times he reaches down to see if it's still in his boot. Of course it's not, because it was in the dream. But I think he forgets sometimes that's where he found it.
Is it still in his boot when he makes his lucid dream bodies? Something to ponder. The next time
we'll
you
see,
make
because we haven't been back since. Well, no, we have. We have. I think it probably definitely was there for the Vedrak fight, like for that excursion. I think it was definitely still in his boot for that.
Okay.
Well, this I have to ask this question now, because things that we take from the waking world into the dream world, we can discard them in the dream world, but when we wake up, they're still with us in the waking world.
Correct.
So that means one of two things. This was something that was discarded or lost in the dream world when you were in fact there in truth, or there is another needle somewhere in the waking world.
I had a little shadily described what Dora was experiencing the first time she did psychometry on this needle as like this whole sensation of experiencing time flowing through it like a river had become a pool, and she was feeling multiple splashes and concentric circles of ripples coming off of this as how her mind was conceptualizing that. And I think, Johnny, to that point, that may be because there is not just one tattoo needle. There is some tattoo needle in the real world that may have been replicated in multiple lucid dream bodies, one or more of which may have been left behind, or maybe when he left this one behind or dropped it or lost it, then maybe it never manifested in a dream body again. But yes, there are more than one needle.
We don't even know if this is only the second time we've pursued this quest.
You don't. You don't.
We could have been doing this
It's
for
true.
the last...
It's Groundhog Day.
It is the Dark Tower.
to change one thing.
So, this log of Captain Vadrax. I believe the people that speak Aklo are Victora and Barnabas. This afternoon, does any of those three folks want to go through this?
Yeah, Dora's interested in doing that for sure.
And then we have this journal in a yellow leather-bound book that is written in the Aklo alphabet, but not in the Aklo language. And what that will involve is any of you that do speak Aklo, as you're heading towards 9th level eventually, and you're thinking you're going to take a rank in linguistics, you can apply it as this chunk of time being spent parsing this language and figuring it out. So if that's something that any of you are interested in spending time doing, let me know and we can sort of fit that into the clock of
Dora's
activities.
definitely interested in that as well.
But it would take another linguistics on to
Yeah.
basically learn Aklo Mark II.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Dora's definitely going to always take linguistics at every level
Sure.
because it fuels her occult skill unlocks, one of them. So,
And it just seems to be also something she's incredibly good at.
yeah.
We know that Barnabas will always have the time because Barnabas has evenings free to do reading and stuff. That's just something that he can squeeze in. And once Vic is sane,
I mean, this is the part where I go, he's dormant, but he's still not recognizing that he's in the real world.
right?
So it's the part where, like, I wonder if he's starting to get like a little bored and is looking for something to occupy his brain.
I buy that.
So I could see him doing either of those things kind of as like a puzzle of something to kind of look at and be like, oh, I wonder what this is.
Yeah.
But what is the mechanic of not realizing what reality you're in if the sanity damage is gone?
Well, he still has his will saves are still impaired. Like he actually still has mechanical impairment.
From the madness?
Yes.
And it's just because of the type of madness
Yep.
that... Gotcha.
Correct. Yeah, some of the lesser madnesses, dormancy just equals there's no crunch. He's still got crunch.
Okay.
Yeah.
I still got crunch.
But today it sounds like Dora will spend some time reading that. Great. Does Dabs have meditation vision for today, or is that something to eye for the future?
It's just thinking about the fight on the Bloodwind and the experience of treading her boards and getting a sense of what real evil weirdness, unnatural evil weirdness feels like. Something that's so wrong and so against Dabwick's understanding of how
Yeah.
things should be. And Dabwick also cast their first flame strike, which had some divine power behind it.
Yeah.
So I think Dabwick is meditating on what does it mean to feel like that ship was unholy? And what does it mean to feel like I have some connection to a divine power?
And they've been wrestling with this increasing sense of detachment to their capital U understanding when they're in the dream, and then springing back in the middle of this fight that was going so outlandishly poorly, springing back into the real world. And of course, Dabwick's experience, which we haven't really talked about since,
Yeah.
but was simply woke up and the fight was happening. You were the last one to wake, and everybody on the ship was huddled over you like, we're about to fight right now! Go! Go! So everyone's screaming in your face, casting spells, demanding, get up and start helping out. And out of this desperate scene, eventually when the fight narrowed down to these last two fronts of Daggerbotha and Vadrak,
Right.
called upon this enormous burst of power that they had heretofore not had access to or had employed before.
Flame strike.
Yes. So Dora spent some time with the journal. This is Captain Vadrak's log. Recall, this is a very small book that when you open it contains thousands of pages, maybe an infinite number of pages, and seems to have centuries, maybe millennia of experiences and data in it. So we had sort of talked about maybe she starts at the back. Most recent stuff, just to kind of get some context around this stuff, just also sort of place herself in time, from which she could certainly work back.
Yeah.
Tell me what you find out about what he wrote about recently. You learn that Vadrak delivered Wherein to Thrushmoor right around the same time that Stasi, Winter, and Omari arrived, a day or two before the earthquake. She had brought the Kuru with her on the Bloodwind. They had picked them up over 2,000 miles away on the Cannibal Isles and the Shackles the previous day. Wherein had said to Vadrak there was something she was looking forward to taking care of in Thrushmoor and wanted some time, about 3 weeks or so, to see to her business. And then you'll learn the gist of basically what we heard in our Act 2 epilogue, essentially that the Bloodwind returned to Thrushmoor just as you all were leaving it 34 days ago or so. Dagobotha saw the ship, swam out to it, and filled in Vadrak and all that had happened, pressed Vadrak to immediately follow the Starling, and Vadrak was tempted by how close Timo was, but he had an oath to fulfill. I think he may have said something about this in some of the blowharding in one of the episodes where you were fighting him when he was trying to survive. The next part of this story demonstrates what makes this journal so difficult.
Blowing hard, I think.
Hard blowing. So Dora learns here, like, what makes this journal so hard to follow. You can locate when the Bloodwind returns to Galarian, which was 3 days later in your timelines. But a week's worth of activities are listed in the journal in the meantime. As it seems, Vadrak had begun a quest to a volcano called Negronic on the Isle of Oriab, far across the Dreamland's southern sea. There he, quote, spoke at the faces of the earth gods and learned where Wherein could be found. At this point, Dagobotha was growing impatient and railing continuously about revenge. Vadrak debated feeding him to Elish, but decided that since they were on Oriab, what the fuck, they'd pick up some Vuniths, which they did. They popped back to the material plane, dropped them off, hoping they'd give the fishman a sense of fucking satiation. He offered to leave Dagobotha in the real world at that point, but the coward declined and begged to stay with Vadrak. And then shit gets really weird. Vadrak, Elish, and Dagobotha sailed the Bloodwind to Leng and underwent an epic quest to find Wherein, who had, at that point, re-manifested there after you all killed her, and to free her from the slave pits of the moon beasts. This seems to have either taken them months or years in their timeline. Because again, they were in not just the dimension of dreams, but the dimension of dreams inside the dimension of dreams. So the notes are so sporadic and confusing, it's hard to parse a story. There's one whole week encapsulated with just 2 words. They molt! Exclamation mark. There is no reference to what the they is or whether the molting is a good thing or a bad thing. But after a great length of time and many adventures, Vadrak fulfilled what he called his blood oath and found Wherein. However, by the time he got to her, she didn't exactly need to be, air quotes, rescued. She had changed. And Vadrak notes in his log that he was actually a little fearful of her. She had been, in her words, embraced by the king, who had hollowed her heart and warped her flesh. Not exactly sure what that means. With some new, apparently divine powers granted by the king in yellow, she had slain her moonbeast captors and was just sitting there, waiting for Vadrak to bring her the Bloodwind, which is basically her safest means back to the Dreamlands. She had one last mission for him there. They picked up a platoon of Lang soldiers and set out. Whatever this mission was, it must have gone smoothly, for there's scant reference to it in the logs. And once it was done, it seems like whatever ties had bound Vedrak and Wherein together had run their course. And Vedrak was finally free to hunt down Tima Antea, the witch Tima Antea. It's always the witch Tima Antea. Hunt down the witch Tima Antea and put her to death for the foul debasement she'd caused him. They picked up several flying denizens of the Dreamlands and planned to use them to harry her ship and beat down their defenses before moving in to destroy them. The further she digs back into whatever happened between Tima and him, it was obviously so humiliating to him personally that he does not log, he doesn't journal about it. He doesn't share his feelings except for just continuous anger and rage and the debasement is the word that he continuously uses. So whatever happened, it was anathema to him. Heyo.
Wordplay.
And if there's any other behind the scenes, what was going on with Vedrak from that period, questions that you have either now or later, just let me know. And I would say you'd probably be able to kind of parse them out.
So he just left Wherein.
Or she left him.
Yeah, you would get the sense he took her somewhere with a platoon of Lang soldiers and then left her there, and his job was done. His oath was done, his mission fulfilled, his time was his own.
But this implies to me, unless I'm thinking of it wrong, that she was more interested in whatever she needed that platoon of soldiers for than us.
Oh, 100%. Yes, I think that is a fair assessment of how Dora would read this.
That's a
like
relief.
maybe even no mention of you all.
Yeah, like we don't even rate.
But she'd also seem to have ascended to some level of divine power.
Right. Yeah, so she's got all the time in the world to come after us, is what you're saying.
And was Dagorbatha with him when they went to drop off the troops and the platoon and do all that stuff?
It sure sounds that way, yeah.
Is any of this information that you share with us?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Should share
debrief
that.
at the end of the reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, great.
Vic has been hanging out with Luna the cat.
Yes. Oh, thank you for remembering.
Yeah.
We have another... I gotta make a token for
Absolutely.
Roll20 for Luna.
But yeah, no, I think that he has absolutely just been like hanging out with the cat, and they've been hanging, enjoying things, being cat-like together and living the dream.
Yeah.
But
biting and rolling, knocking things off of tables.
When Dora says this, he goes, oh yeah, I got an idea. And I don't imagine that we've like dispatched with the bodies yet. Have we tossed them overboard? Did we do anything like that?
I mean, we went to Zur.
Yeah, I mean, that was half a week ago.
Okay. So we would have ditched everything already. All right.
What are you thinking?
I was thinking that that Vic would probably go over to Dagorbatha's body and pull out some conduction plates and strap them on. And
confabulation plates.
Confabulation plates and strap them on to him and see what kind of information he could extract.
Tell you what, if you can give me a convincing story of why maybe he'd hung on to the body for half a week, maybe the body's there. I mean, it seems like you probably would have just dumped him overboard, but if you can, I don't know. What do you think?
Probably not.
Okay.
I mean, I can't. Anything that I'd come up with would be Johnny trying to reach for something rather than like a story thing. But
you don't have his body anymore, but you do have items that had belonged to him. Maybe there's something you can do with that kind of stuff in the future. Barnabas is wearing his headband.
Yeah, do any of those have psychic significance of any kind?
Psychic significance.
I mean, the way you described this was a possibly years long quest in the Dreamland.
Fair enough. Let me stew on that before next we meet.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I want to put some thought in that. Gripper.
Aye.
Give me that fucking Santa check.
I don't have penalties anymore. I'm back to a +5. 4 on the die for a 9.
Action point it.
I am 9. What about stamina point? No. So a 9. A 9 today.
All right. A 9 or a 10 would have you earning a crappy dockside wage in a harbor city. It's you're not impressing anybody, but you're still doing
I'm not
yeoman's
ripping
work.
sails.
Exactly. We'll save that for natural ones, and then on days when you manage to clear 20, which you've done a few times, we can.
Well, and it makes sense that it's not a rousing success right now if he's starting to learn more complicated concepts and theories and things like that. So,
Absolutely.
So that all checks out, I suppose.
So, we're at a crossroads here. Everybody is healed up and at 0 sanity damage, and we could conceivably, as soon as tonight, jump back into the Dreamlands. I will say to the 2 adults in the room, as I've come to calling you, Dora and Dabwick, the 2 of you would be eyeing Vic as the closest to getting to that point where he might get clear of this bullshit that he's ever been.
Yeah.
And you know that Gripper is only a couple of days past that. If you're sitting at a point here where you're like, maybe we convince them to just coast for a few days here, catch our communal breaths, focus on healing up and recovering, I can also see that being as a viable option here. What y'all think?
Yes.
Yeah, sounds like a great idea.
Dora's. Katie keeps doing over this, so Dora must. But the idea that we need to get all 7 things is something we made up. That is not proven anywhere. It may just be that we all need to present one gift to the Mad Poet.
Interesting.
In which case, we're a lot closer to our goal than if we have to get all of them. But the only evidence she has to back up that theory is that Tima's notes seem to fritter out the more quests she reported on. So,
there's
Dora
definitely
feels
one
like
quest where you are just not sure if they've
they
finished
even
it or
did
not.
Finished it.
Yeah.
The foot. Is
The
that
red
Red
web
web
foot.
foot.
Yes.
Red web foot.
And you know that they went at this idol situation for a long period of time. Did the notes indicate? Do you have definitive proof that they finished it or not?
I was
don't
just
think
looking.
so.
Check
I
your
feel
notes
like
on
it's
that.
more than one.
This was which one? The
That would be
Greenstone
the
Idol.
Greenstone
The
Idol of a
Greenstone
water lizard.
Idol. There are no solid after-action notes about what happened there, but some time stamping would lead you to believe this quest took a while.
Okay.
And I want to say, too, Johnny Metagaming, I believe there was some mention of the spells that Ray cast to save them during that time period that would have indicated that he was like
So,
10th level?
leaning
Like,
heavily on Braden and hoping his ties with Zon Kuthan might protect them. Is that what you're...
Yeah, I think there was, I feel like there was something else that was specifically noted in one of the visions that Dora had. I cannot remember exactly what it was, but there was something that was mentioned. I remember listening to it and going like, oh, wow, if that magic was used, that means that he was at least blah, blah, blah level.
I think at the time you were hearing stuff about that before you even knew what they were talking about.
Yeah.
You would definitely be on track to think, holy crap, they were way higher than us. I think you would process now they were probably in the vicinity of where you're at. And also, Ray at that time was a cleric, not an oracle,
Yep.
so he had access to higher level spells before Ray ever would
Yep.
have. Before anybody in this party. Well, I guess Dabwick. So Dabwick, if he was casting 4th and or maybe 5th level spells, the party was certainly not 4th level.
How was it worded, the knowledge of the gifts, that gifts are required? Do we have that written to how that was worded and the list that we found, was there any context for the list? You know what I mean?
No context for the list.
Okay.
The reason why it was so hard to find was there was no context. It just was, you took the Yellow King telling you, I think we put that on page 42, that we put that list there.
Right.
Let me see how.
Commune, that's what it was. He used a commune.
There you go.
which was a 5th level
Fifth level
spell, which
spell.
meant that he would
It was
have had to
ninth
have
level.
been 9th level
Yep.
at least.
Oh, I do have it. Lols and Tima continued their research, and Tima discovered that the mad poet would treat with no one that approached him without bearing gifts. And so the hunt for suitable gifts began. As you look at how each of those gift knowledge stuff is worded, you can basically get a story of it seems like Lols was out going to the caravanserai and into the Dreamlands, finding out what are the mad poet's interests, coming back to Tima and saying he's interested in the soul as a commodity. He's interested in unique and otherworldly predators. He's interested in, and then Tima went and collected what she considered to be impeccable examples of these things that were the mad poet's interests. But I don't think you discover at any point he requires X gifts or he requires one gift from everybody. It seemed to be the philosophy of Lols and the former crew that the more the better, and they didn't want to bring too few. But you don't actually know how many they did bring.
But you know.
I do know, yes.
You could just tell us. But that's not good radio.
What does everybody else think about the number of gifts? Is anybody else sitting on a thought of we don't need all of them, or just one for each, or is there an assumption we got to do all of them, or what are you thinking?
I had assumed we needed to do all of them, but that was only an assumption. Like, that was not based on... It was only based on the fact that that's what was on the list, right? There's that number of things on the list. I mean, to me, it seems plausible that a gift per person seems legit, but I would hate to show up there and realize it's not, and then get
Too late
wished
at that
away.
point, yeah.
But it's, I don't know, that seems reasonable to me.
Is this a conversation that we're having in character in some way?
We've had the debrief on everything she learned there. Let's say it's the end of the day, not quite dinner, not quite meditation. We can check in character here, yeah.
It seems to me that if they didn't get that last one, that might be the only one that matters, because otherwise we're just going back and getting the thing that, this mad poet guy already got. And he may not care about any of these things, but he may care about the one that they didn't get.
That's right.
So,
Also, let's not forget that they didn't get what they wanted from the mad poet. Oh, wait.
did
No.
Lols get what he wanted from him?
Lols did get what he wanted from them.
Yeah.
We don't know.
So the way the Yellow King put it was, his memory is pretty freaky, but you know that there was some treating with the mad poet at that last thing. So whatever they brought, it seems like it was sufficient to at least engage in conversation. And then the mad poet opened his book and showed it to Lols, and when he read it, then whatever else happened, the Yellow King was created, and some part of Lols, either his psyche shattered or his memories went through something like yours, or he was shattered into many pieces. Whatever, you don't know for sure, but at least one version of him completely separated and then got turned into this denizen of the Dreamlands. So whatever they brought seems to have at least been sufficient to engage in further conversation. They were not killed outright, but he doesn't have a memory of what happened to Brayden and Roni and Rip Tusk and Tima
Right.
and Vaticus.
So then there could be versions of us in the Dreamland.
Multiple versions of all of us.
Man, I wish I miss YK. I can't wait to wake up.
Someday, buddy.
Maybe we
Yeah,
should
that's
go.
how I feel.
It's Grip biting his tongue.
Yeah, he's digging his nails into the palm of his hand. Just don't open it. Don't open it.
We have gotten from YK everything we think we can get from him, yeah?
Yeah. I mean, these kind of questions are good. If anything comes up that I think maybe he would have tossed in, I will certainly throw it in. But his memory is, he has a little bit more than the four of you original characters woke up with, but he's kind of in the same boat of like, yeah, I don't really know what happened. And I kind of have a memory of a life, but it doesn't seem to jibe with what you know his life was actually like. What's all this like for Dabwick? So talking about these quests, talking about these other versions of these people that you never met, what is Dabwick's relationship to those conversations and the endless, how many gifts are we going to do? And
Dabwick would like to feel prepared.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just not, just doesn't seem to be in the cards. Like
such a frustrating feeling.
It is a very frustrating feeling.
Basically limitless power at your disposal, but needing to choose every day what power you allow yourself to have is so unbelievably frustrating when you don't have information about what you're headed into. I sympathize.
If Ned was here, he'd say, "Isn't it wonderful?"
Isn't that somehow beautiful?
That rat was all right.
Yeah, I think the history that you all have that Dabwick came into makes you all very special indeed. But I think it's the tie with Shaman Dora that is continuing to connect why we have to keep going, and looking forward to when our friends feel better so that we can get back onto the quest.
You've got this little weird dark family now that is all bound together by this thing. And you are both deeply entwined in their lives and their experience. And when we talk about this kind of stuff, deeply separate. You have, like, none of this stuff has happened to you before. You don't know those versions of those people. You don't even know this guy you're chasing after.
But we don't either.
Yes,
really.
It's true. It's true.
There's a lot of wondering. There's this wondering of the relationship to the divine. There's wondering of the relationship to what it means to be an authentic, true partner and friend to this group, even though we don't share a family history. And it's actually a deep respect for where you are all connected, for how you are all connected, and curiosity. But maybe at times it gets a little in the weeds of the details, and they're zooming by Dabwick's short head and maybe not as engaged.
Yeah.
Not Paulie, but Dabwick.
Yeah. There's a lot of not jokes, but shorthand from the things that we've experienced that they haven't.
Right.
Yeah, which has to be hard. Has to be so hard.
So does it feel like then that we're going to try to convince these folks, we're going to direct these folks to maybe hang out in the real world for a few more days and try to get clear of some of this madness?
Yeah.
Sounds like a good plan. At dinner time, I would like a limerick, please.
Hi, everybody. This is Stanhope Nixon.
Hi, Stanhope.
Hey, thanks, Lynn.
Oh, yeah.
Know who he is.
He says his name like he's a fucking celebrity. I don't know. Sorry, go ahead.
There was a young girl named Maeve who was smart and decidedly brave. She gave me some food and a magic hat to boot. I'm grateful that she misbehaved.
I miss Maeve.
I did too.
She is a good girl. I have some rhyming notes for you in there. But that was good. I miss Maeve too.
So then, as night falls, deep silence falls about the little ship, anchored there so audaciously in the jaws of the wilderness. The river gleams like a sheet of black glass beneath the stars. The cold air pricks in the drafts of night that pour their silent tide from the depths of the southern forest, with messages from distant ridges and from lakes just beginning to freeze. There lays the bleak odor of winter. Then a change of the wind stirs gently the reflection of the stars within the river, rising among the far ridges of the country to the north. It passes over the deck with a faint and sighing murmur, almost too delicate to be audible. And with it, down the desert paths of night, there passes a curious, thin odor. An odor of something that seems familiar but utterly unknown. Rotting fish meets rank body odor. As you all are heading downstairs for the night, Harlar simply looks off to the north, nods. Yep. Marsh giants. And this night, while the sounds of the wind rustle and murmur on deck, and you sleep below that deck, the inmost blot once again dreams your dreams. You are holy. Let's find out what you dreamed tonight. Center yourselves again, once again, on what it feels like to enter and waken from a dream. How hard it is to hold on to details, but how easy it is to cling to the feelings, the emotions. Last time we did this, Grip dreamt of learning to tie knots without having any fingers. Vic dreamt of drowning endlessly in the formless spawn. Dora dreamt of trying to quiet her mind, but not being able to silence her Tima within. And Dabwick dreamt of learning to sneak in the alleys of Casimir, but always being surrounded by enemies. And tonight, you dream about a period of transition, a very specific one. A transition from adolescence into adulthood. But as always, dream logic here, not necessarily, unless you want, but not necessarily a literal event or a specific moment, but about a change from feeling like your life is being defined and controlled by others into a feeling that at last you are in control, or in a measure of control. And maybe this feeling is connected to literal adolescence, or maybe it's not. Maybe it's more of a spiritual adolescence. But when this dream begins, you are young. And when this dream ends, you were never young again. You dream of something that brings about this change. Maybe you see something, maybe you learn something, maybe you decide something, maybe you pick something up, you put something away, an idea, a choice. Maybe you know in the moment that something is happening to you, but maybe you don't. Vic, who is Vic at the beginning of this dream? Who is he? What does he believe? He's Gull.
He's Gull.
Okay.
Because that's his childhood.
Dora, who are you when this begins? Or where are you? Or what's happening? Or what do you believe?
I'm curious and hopeful.
Are you literally young?
No, I've never been literally young.
Yeah.
Only new.
Gripper, who are you at the beginning of this dream?
A wee fucking boy. Younger than we've ever seen him.
Oh, little buddy. And what about Dabwick?
Pre-adolescent Dabwick.
And what happens to Dabwick? What is this moment or this period or time of change? Why does it happen? Why is there change?
Dabwick wants to be heard and wants to be seen, and realizes that they're laughing at them.
They're being laughed at.
Realizes they're being laughed at.
What happens to Dora? Why does this change happen? What is this? What is this change?
It's twofold. It begins when she reaches out into the mind of a madman and sees a monster. But she cheated. She ran from that. And it came back when she saw Ray fall on the streets of Thrushmore. And then it could not be avoided anymore.
What kind of change happens to Gull in this dream tonight? And is it literal, or is it a barrage of emotion?
it's both. It's the battle with the Tatterman and the loss of control and fear and being just terrified and useless and weak and that long boat ride across the lake and thinking that the only way to survive was to harden himself.
Yeah.
And having that stripped away when Ray died.
Yeah.
So it's both.
And what happens to we fucking Gripper?
He's with his brother, and they're playing this fucking game where they slap each other on the face and take turns, and they laugh, and they laugh.
Who would do such a thing?
And each time they trade slaps, they get a little bit older and a little bit older.
Oh boy.
And then there's finally the last slap. He's got a fucking volcanic rock in his hand. Grip does.
Does he notice that before he makes that last slap, or does he notice after the last slap is landed?
In the dream, he notices after the slap has landed.
And who is he as he's holding that volcanic rock, realizing what he's just done?
He's the age that we saw him in the Wherein
Yeah.
vision.
Does he feel better, worse, bigger, smaller?
Worse. I think he loved his brother. I get the sense, just from kind of what we've learned in the little tidbits, that there was a reason it had to happen.
At least that's what Grip is telling him. Grip's dream is telling him tonight.
That's what his subconscious is definitely telling him.
Yeah, like that. Who is Dora after this change, after seeing this monster, after fleeing?
This comes with great shame, but she's a coward. She's been instructed that no matter how new you are, or hopeful, or curious, you always have something to lose. And she can either give in to that fear or fight it. Feels like she has to choose every moment which to do.
Does she make a choice in this dream, or is she just aware of the choice?
She's just aware of the choice and of how often she is forced to make it, which she is able to ignore, I think, in her day-to-day life. Because it's just living. But here, it's the weight of the choice itself, and the volume, the frequency. It's crushing.
Dabwick understands that they're never going to listen to them, and that they will always be laughing at them. Who are they after this realization?
Dabwick is determined to be heard, determined to have their voice shared, and determined to never be thought of as someone's little pet. And so this feeling came back to them in the fight with Millicent, yeah.
That was an old battle that was dredged up.
And Dabwick thought at the time, they're making fun of me because I'm small. But I'm not getting much taller. So I better do something about it.
Huh.
And so a more determined Dabwick stopped being worried about being laughed at and started to find their voice.
And who is Gull? I don't know if it's at the end of this boat ride. At the metaphysical end of this boat ride away from the cowardice and uselessness, loss of control. Who is he after wrestling with that?
I think he's still wrestling with it. I think that he's Vic now. And he's free of the illusion. but also, nobody gets out of this world alive. There's a thing, too, of these thoughts that are in my head aren't me. They're just the thoughts in my head.
Finally, at the end of this dream, a door opens because of the way you have changed or because of who you have become. What is that door? What can you now do? Where can you now go? What's Dabwick's door?
Dabwick's door is the door to the local constabulary in Casimir.
Yeah.
Where they've crossed the threshold many times to lodge a complaint or to let it be known of one thing or another is out of place.
Yeah.
And they're content with this door. This is a door that's going to be very familiar to them.
Yeah. What door opens for Gull/Ronnie/Vic at the end of this voyage?
You see what looks like a door open up, and then the perspective changes, so rather than standing up, it's someone laying down, looking up, and it's a coffin door that's opening. And it's his friends looking down on him and missing him and loving him.
The wee gripper, who's now an older gripper, standing with that rock in his hand over his brother. What door does he see or find?
I think he sees, I don't know, is it a ladder or stairs? It's whatever goes from below decks to the deck of the Sullen Starling.
Yeah, steep ship's ladder. Yeah.
That's the door he sees. Blue sky.
Blue sky above.
Yeah.
And what about Dora?
It's 2 doors, and they're in the floor.
Uh-huh.
And she knows it's an escape hatch. And she's been through those doors before. And it was safe and comforting. And she had a friend she could hold against her chest and stroke his fur. And it was safe. And she wants that again. She doesn't want to be the adult in the room anymore.
Right.
And before she can think about what she's doing, she reaches for the handles and she opens them and she realizes, fuck. It's not a door. It's a box. And I opened it.
Grip, was your dream real or true?
I think the slapping game is real, but overall, the dream is true. Like, I think that's a game he played.
Yeah.
What else are you gonna do?
You're a young orc. What are you gonna do? Dora, was your dream real or true?
The things that happened were real. But whether she opens those doors remains to be seen. It was a warning.
Vic. Real or true?
Unknown.
And Dabwick.
Both real and true.
You wake on the morning of the 18th of Chthona, day 38 on the boat, and a few hours into the morning shift, around mile 390 or so of our voyage. In the early morning gloom and chill, we encounter our first faith barge of the day. Large, wide barge bristling with oars manned from below decks, massive furled purple sail, prow adorned with dozens of steel masks bolted to the hull, and the name Tribute Taker scrawled across it in a red paint clearly designed to look like dripping blood. The deck is crawling with dudes, a motley collection of obvious pirates. 8 grungy, scuzzy, unsavory-looking buccaneers with heavy crossbows out and loaded. There's a towering, white-bearded, 50-something dude hefting a wicked-looking trident, and what seems to be their captain, a completely fucking unhinged-looking 40-something-year-old guy. Black hair, black beard, black chain, black leather, black cloak, black boots. He has an iron mask dangling from his neck on an iron chain, and he's leaning onto a massive sword as tall as he is. As everyone's sort of getting organized on decks, they veer the tribute taker right at the Starling, slightly in front, clearly blocking its path. And Skywin, who's now up on her feet thanks to the restoration, steps out. You all are, at this point, backup buddies would be sleeping. Let's say the cluster of Gosarib and Harlar are shutting themselves inside the cabin. Other folks on deck are drawing their crossbows. But everyone's trying to be like, hey, be chill. It's cool. You know, this is what it is to travel in Razmarin. And the man in black hollers out, "Serve ye the living god!" And Skywin's like, "Well, as you can see, we have a coin of passage from Zer. Oh, but serve ye the living god, little wench." Little wench now, really? All that be yours, be his. All that be his be mine to claim. Your worldly goods be forfeit. Your lives be forfeit. Your heathen hearts shall bleed. Your frail bodies shall be broken. Today, they all yell, today, this red day beneath my fist and beneath my steel, you will bend, break, and bleed. And that's the end of chapter 123. We're gonna fight some pirates next episode, y'all.
I can't wait.
Dark Nexus is produced by Plug and Hum Productions. This podcast uses trademarks and/or copyrights owned by Paizo Incorporated, used under Paizo's fan content policy. This podcast is not published, endorsed, or specifically approved by Paizo. For more information about Paizo Inc. and Paizo products, please visit paizo.com. That's PAIZO.com. Dark Nexus uses music and soundscapes by Syrinscape. Check them out at Syrinscape.com. That's SYRINSCAPE.com. Opening and closing themes, along with additional music composed by Rob Kauzlaric. Artwork for Dark Nexus is by Matt Wahlquist. And thanks to DMCP, Richard and Ari, Paul and Shannon, Scotty, Jason, Jess, Joe, Chelsea, Matt, Dave, Derek, Darren, Michaela, J.H., the Biscuit Buddies, and everyone we've gamed with over the years for all the memories and inspiration.
You know what we're fighting here? We're fighting a couple 2-3 tigers.
Hey-o.
Is that a reference to something?
No, it's just, it's like the Chicago 3, but it's a couple
Tree.
2-3 tigers.
Yeah,
A couple 2-3 tigers over by there.
Oh, tree tigers.
Yeah,
I get it.
yeah,
Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Thanks for taking the time to explain it to
That's
me.
the sign of a good joke.